The darkness of space stretched endlessly in all directions as the Galactic Coalition fleet moved through the Outer Rim territories. Commander Vexstar stood on the bridge of his flagship watching the stars through the massive viewing window. His 4 eyes scanned the sensor displays while his crew worked quietly at their stations. The Coalition had been exploring this region for months looking for new worlds to colonize, but so far they had found nothing but empty space and dead rocks. The bridge was filled with beings from different worlds all working together. The tall blue-skinned Zephyrians operated the navigation systems while the small furry Quilex creatures managed communications. Everyone had their role in the great coalition that spanned hundreds of star systems. They were the most advanced civilization the galaxy had ever known, or so they believed. Suddenly, the main sensor operator, a young Vorthan named Krelax, called out in excitement. His tentacles moved rapidly over the control panel as strange readings appeared on his screen. The sensors had detected something massive floating in the void ahead of them. It was big, much bigger than any coalition ship, and it was not moving at all. Commander Vexstar moved to the sensor station to see for himself. The object was enormous, stretching nearly 2 kilometers from end to end. It appeared to be some kind of spacecraft, but unlike anything in their databases. The design was all wrong, with sharp angles and straight lines instead of the smooth curves that all modern ships used. It looked primitive and ancient, like something from the dark ages of space travel. The commander ordered his fleet to approach carefully. 3 coalition ships moved toward the mysterious vessel while keeping their weapons ready. As they got closer, the details became clearer through their advanced scanning systems. The hull was dark and scarred with what looked like damage from countless battles. Strange symbols covered sections of the outer surface, but their universal translators could not read them at all. Captain Yoon commanded one of the smaller ships in the fleet, called the Stellar Wind. He was a career officer who had spent most of his life exploring unknown regions of space. His ship was fast and well equipped for investigation missions like this one. When Commander Vexstar asked for volunteers to board the unknown vessel, Captain Yoon immediately offered his services. The boarding party included some of Captain Yoon's best crew members. Engineer Kim was an expert with alien technology and could figure out almost any system given enough time. Navigator Park had studied dozens of extinct civilizations and might be able to understand the strange ship better than anyone else. They were excited but also nervous about what they might find inside. As their shuttle approached the alien vessel, they could see more details of its construction. The ship looked incredibly old, but there was something strange about it. Most ancient spacecraft showed signs of long exposure to cosmic radiation and space dust, but this one looked almost clean. The metal surfaces were dark but not corroded, and there were no signs of the typical wear that came from drifting through space for centuries. The shuttle found what appeared to be a docking bay on the side of the massive ship. The bay doors were closed, but Captain Yoon's engineer managed to activate them using standard coalition override codes. This surprised everyone since most alien technology required special adapters or completely different command protocols. The doors opened smoothly, revealing a large, empty space that could hold several shuttles. Inside the docking bay, the air was breathable according to their sensors. The artificial gravity was working at standard coalition levels, which seemed impossible for a ship that appeared to be dead and powerless. Emergency lighting flickered along the walls, casting strange shadows that made the empty bay look even more mysterious and somewhat frightening. Captain Yoon led his team deeper into the vessel, through corridors that were wider than anything on coalition ships. The ceilings were high, and the hallways seemed designed for beings larger than most of the species in their alliance. Everything was built on a grand scale, as if the original inhabitants had been giants or simply preferred having lots of space. Around them, the walls were covered with more of the strange symbols they had seen on the outside. Engineer Kim tried to scan them with her portable translator, but got no results. The symbols seemed to pulse faintly with their own light, as if they were somehow alive. Navigator Park took detailed pictures, hoping that the coalition scientists back home could figure out what they meant. As they explored further into the ship, They found signs that it had been occupied recently. Food dispensers lined some corridors, and they contained supplies that looked fresh according to their scanners. Sleeping quarters showed evidence of use with beds that had been slept in and personal items left behind. Environmental systems hummed, quietly maintaining perfect temperature and air quality throughout the vessel. This discovery troubled the boarding party greatly. They had expected to find an ancient derelict ship filled with dust and debris. Instead, they found a vessel that seemed to be waiting for its crew to return. The lights worked, the air was clean, and everything appeared to be in perfect working order, despite showing no energy signatures from the outside. Back on the Coalition, Flagship Commander Vexstar received regular reports from the boarding teams. Dr. Nextra, the fleet's chief scientist, was fascinated by the readings they were getting. The ship appeared to be constructed from materials that were unknown to Coalition science. The hull was incredibly strong and showed no signs of age despite clearly being very old. The most puzzling aspect was the ship's power system. Their scanners detected a massive reactor at the center of the vessel, but it was completely different from anything they had ever seen. Instead of the fusion reactors used by all Coalition ships, this one seemed to contain actual stellar matter, as if someone had captured part of a star and used it as an engine. Admiral Kexmore received the initial reports at Coalition headquarters and immediately ordered the fleet to secure the vessel for detailed study. This could be the greatest archaeological discovery in galactic history. A ship from an unknown civilization with technology that might be centuries ahead of their own capabilities. The scientific implications were staggering, and the potential military applications even more so. The alien crews throughout the Coalition fleet began making jokes about the primitive-looking craft they had found. The angular design looked crude and outdated compared to their sleek modern vessels. Some of the younger officers laughed about the strange symbols and the oversized corridors. They assumed they had found the remains of some failed civilization that had tried to build warships, but lacked the knowledge to make them properly. But Captain Yoon and his team were not laughing as they continued their exploration of the mysterious vessel. Something about the ship felt wrong in ways they could not explain. It was too clean, too well maintained, and too ready for immediate use. This was not the tomb of a dead civilization, but something far more dangerous and unknown. Teams from 12 different Coalition species boarded the massive alien vessel over the next few days. Each group brought their own expertise and equipment, hoping to unlock the secrets of the mysterious ship. The corridors that had seemed empty and quiet to Captain Yoon's initial team now buzzed with activity as scientists, engineers, and military specialists explored every section they could access. Chief Engineer Yulenak from the heavy cruiser Harmony led the technical analysis team. He was a Corvan whose species was known throughout the galaxy for their engineering skills. His thick armored skin protected him from the ship's strange energy fields, while his 6 arms allowed him to operate multiple scanning devices at once. What he found in the ship's engine room left him completely speechless. The power core was unlike anything in Coalition records, or even their wildest theoretical designs. Instead of the standard fusion reactors that powered every known spacecraft, this ship used what appeared to be contained stellar matter. A miniature star burned at the heart of the vessel, held in place by force fields that should have been impossible to maintain. The reactor was currently dormant, but showed clear signs that it could be reactivated with the right commands. The energy output from such a system would be enormous, far beyond what any Coalition ship could produce. Engineer Yulenak calculated that this single vessel could power an entire space station or even a small city on a planet's surface. The implications were staggering because it meant whoever built this ship had mastered technology that the Coalition was still centuries away from achieving. Lieutenant Bio from the Coalition Marines led his squad through the ship's weapon systems. What they found made even these battle-hardened soldiers nervous. The armaments were built into the ship's structure, rather than mounted externally like all Coalition designs. Massive cannons ran along the hull connected to ammunition storage areas that could hold projectiles the size of small shuttles. The main weapon appeared to be a single, enormous cannon that stretched along the entire spine of the ship. The barrel was nearly 2 kilometers long, and the support systems suggested it could fire projectiles at significant fractions of light speed. Lieutenant Bio had commanded artillery units in several coalition wars, but had never seen anything designed for destruction on this scale. The torpedo bays were equally impressive, containing launch tubes that could fire volleys of massive warheads. Each torpedo was larger than a coalition fighter craft, and the storage areas held hundreds of them. The guidance systems were sophisticated beyond anything in coalition arsenals, with targeting computers that could track thousands of objects simultaneously across interstellar distances. Navigator So worked on what appeared to be the ship's bridge, trying to understand the control systems. She was a Telleri whose species had natural abilities with navigation and stellar cartography. The alien controls were surprisingly intuitive despite being completely different from coalition designs. When she touched the main console, holographic displays sprang to life, showing star charts and navigation data. The maps showed familiar constellations, but from perspectives that suggested this ship had traveled far beyond coalition space. One particular star system appeared repeatedly in the navigation logs, marked with symbols that pulsed with faint energy. Navigator So realized that this system was at the very edge of known space, in a region that coalition explorers had never been able to reach. The stellar cartography data was incredibly detailed, showing not just star positions but planetary compositions, asteroid fields, and even space weather patterns. The information was so comprehensive that it would take coalition scientists years to gather equivalent data about even a single system. Whoever created these charts had spent enormous amounts of time exploring and mapping the galaxy. HFY communications specialist from the research vessel Discovery made another disturbing discovery while examining the ship's communication arrays. The equipment was far more advanced than anything the Coalition possessed, with transmission capabilities that could send messages across the entire galaxy in real time. Most Coalition communications took weeks or months to travel between distant star systems. The communication logs showed regular transmissions to locations beyond the galactic rim in directions where Coalition long-range sensors detected nothing but empty space. The messages were encrypted using algorithms that would take Coalition computers centuries to break. The frequency of transmissions suggested an ongoing conversation with someone or something in the deep void between galaxies. Captain Lee ordered his crew to maintain safe distance as more teams boarded the alien vessel. The Discovery was equipped with the most advanced scientific equipment in the Coalition fleet and was recording everything they found. The data they were gathering would revolutionize their understanding of technology and potentially change the balance of power throughout known space. The Coalition archaeologists made increasingly unsettling discoveries as they explored deeper into the ship. Dr. Nextra found evidence of recent habitation throughout the vessel. Food preparation areas contained supplies that were not only fresh, but included nutrients specifically designed for multiple species, including some that matched Coalition biological requirements perfectly. Living quarters showed signs of recent use, with personal belongings left behind, as if the inhabitants had simply stepped out temporarily. The beds were made, the storage areas were organized, and environmental systems maintained perfect conditions for biological life. This was not an abandoned ship, but rather one whose crew had left with every intention of returning. Most disturbing of all were the observation logs they found in what appeared to be a scientific section of the ship. The records showed detailed studies of Coalition species, including biological data, political structures, and technological capabilities. The information was so comprehensive that it could only have been gathered through long-term observation of Coalition space. The aliens who built this ship had been watching the Coalition for a very long time. They knew about Coalition military capabilities, trade routes, and even internal political disputes. The level of surveillance suggested either an incredible intelligence-gathering operation or the presence of hidden observation posts throughout Coalition territory. Engineer Kim discovered that many of the ship's systems were designed to interface with Coalition technology. Power couplings matched Coalition standards. Communication protocols were compatible. and even the life support systems could be adjusted to accommodate different species requirements. This level of compatibility could not be accidental. As the examination continued, the coalition teams began to realize that they were not dealing with the remains of an extinct civilization. This ship belonged to someone who was very much alive and who had been preparing for eventual contact with the coalition. The question was no longer who had built this vessel, but rather when its creators would return to claim it. Dr. Ho sat at her communication station aboard the research vessel Discovery when the first strange readings appeared on her screens. She had been monitoring the alien ship for 3 days, now looking for any signs of active transmission when suddenly her equipment detected a faint energy signature. The signal was barely detectable at first, but it was growing stronger with each passing hour. The energy pattern was unlike anything in Coalition databases. It pulsed with a rhythm that seemed almost organic, like a heartbeat or breathing pattern. Dr. Ho tried to trace the source using her most sensitive scanning equipment and found that it was coming from deep within the alien vessel. The signal appeared to originate from what their structural scans had identified as the ship's central computer core. She immediately contacted Captain Lee to report her findings. The captain was a cautious man who had survived many years of deep space exploration by never taking unnecessary risks. When Dr. Ho told him about the growing energy signature, he ordered the Discovery to move to a safer distance from the alien ship while maintaining sensor contact. The computer core was a massive, crystalline structure located at the very heart of the vessel. Coalition scanning equipment had identified it during their initial surveys, but had detected no activity from it at all. Now, however, the crystal was beginning to pulse with increasing intensity. Each pulse sent waves of energy throughout the ship, causing systems to activate in sequence. Commander Vexstar received the report on his flagship and immediately ordered all Coalition vessels to go to yellow alert status. The alien ship had been completely dormant for days, but now something was waking up inside it. He contacted all boarding parties and told them to prepare for immediate evacuation if the situation became dangerous. The first visible sign of the awakening came when the ship's external running lights began to activate. The lights had been dark and cold since the Coalition fleet first discovered the vessel, but now they were coming to life in a complex pattern. The sequence started at the bow of the ship and traveled along the hull like a wave of illumination, flowing from front to back. Captain Yoon and his team were still aboard the alien vessel when the awakening began. They felt a subtle vibration through the deck plates as massive systems came online after what must have been centuries of dormancy. The corridor lighting grew brighter and the air circulation systems began operating at full capacity, creating a gentle breeze that carried unfamiliar scents. Engineer Kim watched in amazement as control panels throughout the ship began displaying information in the strange alien script. The symbols glowed with soft light and seemed to pulse in rhythm with the energy signature Dr. Ho had detected. The universal translators were working frantically to decode the text, but progress was slow and difficult. The environmental systems throughout the vessel began making adjustments to accommodate the Coalition boarding parties. The atmosphere was altered to provide optimal breathing conditions for all species present, while temperature controls adjusted to comfortable levels for each different type of alien physiology. It was as if the ship was analyzing its unexpected guests and trying to make them feel welcome. Navigator Park realized that the ship was attempting to communicate with them. The patterns of light and energy pulses were too regular and purposeful to be random system activations. The alien vessel was trying to establish contact but was having difficulty with the language barriers, just as the Coalition was struggling to understand its messages. The ship's computer began transmitting data directly to Coalition equipment using communication protocols that should have been impossible for an alien system to know. The information came in short bursts that their computers could barely process. Slowly, however, patterns began to emerge from the seemingly random data streams. Commander Mu led the cultural analysis team that was trying to interpret the alien communications. He was a Nexari whose species had natural abilities with pattern recognition and linguistic analysis. Working with the ship's universal translators, he began to piece together fragments of meaning from the alien transmissions. The first word they successfully translated was what appeared to be a ship designation. The alien vessel was identifying itself with a name that roughly meant Thunder Echo or Storm Memory in Coalition Standard Language. The exact translation was difficult because the alien language seemed to have multiple layers of meaning built into each word or phrase. More disturbing were the ship's apparent questions about the current date and galactic political situation. The computer seemed confused about how much time had passed and was requesting updates on star charts, political boundaries, and the status of various spacefaring civilizations. It was as if the ship had been asleep for a very long time and was now trying to catch up on everything it had missed. The cultural analysis team discovered references to something called the long sleep and waiting for the call home scattered throughout the ship's data transmissions. The computer seemed to believe that its crew was supposed to return at some point, but was uncertain about when that would happen. There were also mentions of protocols and procedures that would be activated under certain conditions. Most unsettling of all were the combat logs that began appearing in the data streams. The records showed detailed battle reports from engagements with ships belonging to coalition species. The disturbing part was that the dates on these reports corresponded to time periods when those species were supposedly at peace or had not yet achieved interstellar flight capabilities. Drho detected increasing energy output from the alien ship. As more systems came online, the vessel was drawing power from its mysterious stellar core reactor and channeling it throughout the ship. Sections that had been completely dark for centuries were now fully illuminated and operational. It was like watching a sleeping giant slowly wake up. The coalition boarding parties found themselves in an increasingly active environment as the ship continued its awakening process. Corridors that had been silent now echoed with the sounds of machinery and computer systems. The air itself seemed to vibrate with barely contained energy as the massive vessel returned to full operational status. Captain Lee ordered the Discovery to begin detailed scans of the awakening ship. The energy readings were climbing steadily and showed no signs of stopping. Whatever was happening inside the alien vessel was building toward something significant. The question was whether that something would be first contact with a new species, or the beginning of a very dangerous situation for the coalition fleet. The ship's awakening triggered a massive download of information from its central archives. Dr. Shah, the coalition's leading expert on extinct civilizations, worked frantically at her portable computer station, trying to process the flood of data. She was a Valdorian whose species had excellent memory capabilities and could process large amounts of information quickly. Even with her natural abilities, she was struggling to keep up with the volume of data the alien ship was providing. The alien script was gradually becoming readable as the ship's translation protocols adapted to coalition languages. What Dr. Cha discovered in those first translated documents challenged everything the coalition thought they knew about galactic history. The ship belonged to a species that called themselves humans, and according to their records they had been exploring space long before most. Coalition species had even developed written language. The historical archives painted a picture of humanity as one of the galaxy's earliest spacefaring civilizations, while the ancestors of current coalition species were still developing agriculture and basic tools. Humans had already built massive fleets and established colonies throughout what was now coalition territory. Their technology had been centuries ahead of anything available today. Captain Wo reviewed the tactical recordings that Dr. Cha had translated. The files contained detailed battle reports showing human ships engaged in conflicts that spanned decades. The scope of these wars was staggering, with fleets containing thousands of vessels, fighting across multiple star systems simultaneously. Each human ship appeared to be more powerful than anything in the current coalition navy. The Thunder Echo itself had participated in many of these ancient conflicts. Its combat logs showed engagements with enemy forces that would have destroyed entire coalition fleets without significant effort. The ship had fought in battles where victory was measured not in destroyed enemy vessels, but in how many star systems could be defended against overwhelming odds. The weapon systems that Lieutenant Bo had examined made much more sense now. They were designed for warfare on a scale that the Coalition had never experienced. The massive cannons and torpedo launchers were built to engage multiple enemy fleets across interstellar distances. Every aspect of the ship's design reflected the military doctrine of a species that had fought wars for survival against impossible odds. Navigator so discovered that humanity's exploration of the galaxy had been far more extensive than anyone had imagined. The star charts showed human colonies and outposts scattered throughout Coalition space, including systems that were still considered unexplored frontier regions. The humans had mapped and settled areas of the galaxy that Coalition explorers had never even attempted to reach. The most shocking revelation came from the ship's historical databases. Humanity had not simply vanished or died out as the Coalition had assumed about all extinct civilizations. According to the records, humans had made a deliberate strategic decision to leave known space. They had evacuated their entire civilization beyond the galactic rim in response to a threat that the Coalition had no records of ever existing. The threat was described in the human archives as entities from beyond the galaxy. The records were fragmented and many files appeared to be classified even within human society, but the available information painted a picture of an enemy so powerful that humanity had chosen exile over direct confrontation. The humans had left with the intention of returning when conditions were right. Engineer Ra made another disturbing discovery while examining the ship's life support systems. The vessel contained hundreds of sophisticated stasis chambers scattered throughout its hull. Each chamber was designed to preserve a single human life for extended periods far longer than Coalition cryogenic technology could achieve. The chambers were all occupied and showed signs of active life support functions. The human crew of the Thunder Echo was still alive, sleeping in suspended animation while their ship waited for the proper conditions to revive them. The stasis technology was so advanced that the occupants could potentially sleep for millennia without aging or suffering any ill effects. Their ship had been maintaining their lives automatically while drifting through space. Dr. Cha found references to awakening protocols buried deep in the ship's computer systems. The humans had programmed their vessel to revive its crew when specific conditions were met. These conditions included contact with sufficiently advanced alien civilizations and the detection of certain threat patterns that might indicate the return of their ancient enemy. The Coalition boarding parties realized that their presence aboard the ship had triggered these awakening protocols. The vessel had been analyzing Coalition technology and capabilities since first contact. It had determined that the Coalition represented the kind of advanced civilization that the humans had been waiting for. The crew revival process was already beginning. Commander Mu discovered that humanity had left behind an extensive monitoring network throughout Coalition space. Hidden observation posts and automated sensors had been recording Coalition development for centuries. The humans had been watching and waiting while the younger species of the galaxy grew and developed their own civilizations. The observation network explained how the ship had been able to interface so easily with Coalition technology. Human monitors had been studying Coalition ships and equipment for generations. They knew about Coalition military capabilities, trade routes, and even internal political structures because they had been observing everything from hidden positions. Captain Yoon realized that humanity's departure from the galaxy had not been a retreat but rather a strategic withdrawal. The humans had taken their entire civilization beyond the galactic rim to prepare for a future conflict. They had spent millennia developing new technologies and training for a war that had not yet begun but which they knew was inevitable. The human archives contained references to weapons and ships that made the Thunder Echo look primitive by comparison. Humanity had not been idle during their exile, but had been building and preparing for the return of their ancient enemy. They had always intended to come back to the galaxy, but only when they were ready to face the threat that had originally driven them away. Most unsettling of all were the recent entries in the ship's log. The automatic systems had detected signs that the ancient enemy was finally approaching the galaxy again. Long-range sensors beyond the galactic rim had identified massive energy signatures moving through intergalactic space. The time for humanity's return had finally arrived. The Thunder Echo was not just an ancient warship discovered by accident, but rather an advanced scout sent to evaluate current galactic conditions. Its crew would awaken to find a galaxy populated by species that humans had watched grow from primitive civilizations into the mighty coalition. The question was whether this new galactic alliance would be strong enough to stand alongside humanity against the approaching darkness. The Thunder Echo began the crew revival process automatically as its computer systems determined that all awakening conditions had been met. Captain Ju of the Coalition fleet watched through the main viewer as sections of the alien ship began glowing with increased activity. Energy patterns flowed through the hull like blood flowing through veins as hundreds of stasis chambers throughout the vessel started their revival sequences. The first human to awaken was the ship's commanding officer as required by their military protocols. Commander Dae-Seung had been sleeping for over 3,000 years, but the advanced stasis technology meant he awoke feeling as if only a few hours had passed. He was tall and lean with graying hair and numerous scars that spoke of a lifetime spent in combat situations. His first actions upon awakening were to check the ship's status and request updates on current galactic conditions. When the computer informed him that millennia had passed and that humanity was now considered extinct by the galaxy's current inhabitants, his expression grew grim. He had expected to sleep for decades or perhaps centuries, but not for such an enormous span of time. The human crew awakened in carefully planned stages, with each specialist being revived according to protocols established long before the ship had entered its dormant state. Engineer Hyo Jin emerged from stasis and immediately began checking all ship systems with practiced efficiency. Her hands moved over the control panels with the confidence of someone who had operated this equipment for many years. Navigator Wan Ho accessed the stellar cartography systems as soon as he was revived. His eyes widened as he saw how much the galaxy had changed during their long sleep. New civilizations had risen and spread across star systems that had been empty when humanity departed. The political map of known space was completely different from what he remembered. Weapons Officer Tae Hyun reviewed the tactical situation through the ship's external sensors. The coalition fleet surrounding them was impressive by the standards of most galactic civilizations, but his professional assessment was clearly unimpressed. The alien vessels were well designed, but their technology was centuries behind what humanity had achieved even before their exile. Dr. Yoon-suk, the ship's xenobiologist, was fascinated by the opportunity to study so many different alien species at once. She requested permission from Commander Dae-Seung to meet with coalition representatives and learn about the civilizations that had developed during humanity's absence. Her calm scientific demeanor contrasted sharply with the visible tension displayed by her military colleagues. Commander Dae-Seung agreed to meet with coalition leadership, but insisted that the meeting take place aboard the Thunder Echo. He explained that his ship was better equipped to accommodate multiple alien species and that he wanted his crew to observe coalition representatives during the first contact negotiations. The humans were being cautious about revealing too much too quickly. The coalition delegation that came aboard the human ship was led by Commander Vexstar and included representatives from all major species in the alliance. They were amazed by the interior of the Thunder Echo, which was even more impressive now that it was fully operational. Every system hummed with power and efficiency that surpassed anything in coalition technology. Dr. Yoon-suk served as the primary spokesperson for humanity during the initial negotiations. She explained that humans had been observing coalition development through hidden monitoring stations scattered throughout their territory. The observation network had been gathering data on alien civilizations for centuries while waiting for them to reach sufficient technological advancement. The humans revealed that their departure from the galaxy had not been voluntary, but rather a strategic necessity. They had faced an enemy so powerful that direct confrontation would have resulted in the complete destruction of all galactic civilization. Rather than fight a hopeless battle, humans had chosen to evacuate beyond the galactic rim and prepare for the enemy's eventual return. The ancient enemy was described as entities that existed in the void between galaxies. They consumed entire civilizations and used the absorbed knowledge and resources to grow even stronger. Humanity had fought them in a war that spanned centuries before finally realizing that victory was impossible with the technology and allies available at that time. The human exodus had been carefully planned and executed over several decades. Entire populations had been evacuated to ships and transported beyond the galactic edge where they could continue developing new weapons and strategies. The humans had always intended to return, but only when they were strong enough to face their ancient enemy with a realistic chance of victory. Commander Daesung explained that humanity's exile had not been wasted time. They had spent millennia advancing their technology and military capabilities far beyond what they had possessed during the original conflict. The Thunder Echo was actually an older design by current human standards, but it was still more advanced than anything the Coalition possessed. The humans had also been preparing the galaxy for their eventual return. The monitoring network had not been passive but had occasionally provided subtle guidance to developing civilizations. Resources had been left in strategic locations and certain technological discoveries had been encouraged. When alien species were ready for advancement, Navigator Wan Ho revealed that the human exile fleet had grown enormously during their time beyond the galaxy. What had started as a desperate evacuation had become a massive civilization spanning multiple solar systems in the void between galaxies. Billions of humans now lived on artificial worlds and in massive space habitats, all dedicated to preparing for the coming war. The most disturbing revelation came when Dr. Yoon Suk explained why humanity was returning now. Long-range sensors had detected the ancient enemy finally approaching the galaxy again after millennia of absence. The entities that had driven humanity into exile were coming back, and this time they were bringing forces that dwarfed anything from the previous conflict. Engineer Hyo Jin demonstrated human technological capabilities by offering to upgrade coalition ship systems. Her modifications increased power output, efficiency, and defensive capabilities by enormous factors. The improvements were so dramatic that coalition engineers struggled to understand how they were even possible with known physics. Weapons officer Taehyun was less diplomatic in his assessment of coalition military preparedness. He bluntly stated that the current galactic fleet would last perhaps minutes against the approaching enemy. However, he also acknowledged that the coalition species had developed capabilities that complemented human strengths in ways that might prove valuable in the coming conflict. Commander Daesung concluded the meeting with both promises and warnings for the coalition leadership. Humanity was returning not as conquerors but as allies who needed the coalition's help to defend the galaxy. The younger species had grown beyond human expectations and had developed technologies and perspectives that could be crucial for victory. The challenge would be integrating human and coalition forces quickly enough to mount an effective defense. The enemy was approaching steadily and would reach the galactic rim within months rather than years. Every day of preparation was valuable, and there was no time to waste on political negotiations or cultural misunderstandings between species. The coalition leadership struggled to accept the reality of humanity's return and their warnings about an approaching galactic threat. Admiral Kexmore convened an emergency session of the Coalition Council aboard his flagship, bringing together representatives from all major species in the Alliance. The meeting was unprecedented in its scope and urgency as leaders tried to process information that would reshape their understanding of galactic history. Commander Daesung attended the council meeting as humanity's primary representative. He brought with him detailed sensor data and historical records that supported every claim about the approaching enemy. The evidence was overwhelming, but many coalition leaders found it difficult to believe that such a massive threat could exist without their knowledge. The humans provided access to their hidden monitoring network throughout coalition space as proof of their long-term presence in the galaxy. Automated stations that had been invisible to coalition sensors for centuries suddenly began transmitting identification signals. The network was vast and sophisticated with observation posts in every major star system. Captain Jung found himself working directly with human officers as the two fleets began coordinating their operations. The experience was both humbling and inspiring as he witnessed human capabilities firsthand. Engineer Hyojin helped upgrade his ship systems with modifications that seemed to violate several laws of physics but worked perfectly nonetheless. The human technological improvements were shared freely with all. Coalition vessels, power cores, were enhanced to provide 10 times their previous output, while defensive shields were upgraded to withstand weapons that could destroy planets. The modifications were so advanced that coalition engineers needed extensive training just to maintain the new systems. Navigator Wan Ho revealed the full scope of the approaching threat through long-range sensor data gathered by human deep space monitors. The enemy force was enormous, containing millions of vessels, each one larger than the biggest coalition ships. The fleet was moving through intergalactic space at speeds that should have been impossible for objects of such massive size. The enemy ships were unlike anything in coalition or human databases. They appeared to be grown rather than built with organic curves and surfaces that suggested biological rather than mechanical construction. Each vessel pulsed with dark energy that seemed to absorb light and heat from surrounding space, creating zones of absolute cold and darkness. Admiral Kexmore authorized full integration between coalition and human forces despite objections from some species representatives. The approaching threat was too massive for political considerations to matter. Every available ship and crew member would be needed to have any chance of defending the galaxy from the coming invasion. Dr. Yoon Suk worked with coalition scientists to develop new weapons specifically designed to fight the ancient enemy. The entities were vulnerable to certain energy frequencies and weapon types that humanity had discovered during their previous conflicts. The information was used to modify coalition armaments for maximum effectiveness. The integration process revealed both the strengths and weaknesses of each civilization. Coalition forces had developed excellent teamwork and coordination between different species, while humans possessed superior individual ship capabilities and tactical doctrine. The combination of these strengths created a defensive force more powerful than either side could achieve alone. Captain Lee commanded a mixed squadron of coalition and human vessels as they conducted training exercises near the galactic rim. The human ships were faster and more maneuverable than coalition vessels, but the alien crews were better at working together as coordinated units. Both sides learned valuable lessons from each other. The first contact with enemy scouts came sooner than expected. Long-range sensors detected massive energy signatures at the very edge of the galaxy as advance elements of the invasion force arrived. The entities had traveled faster than human projections suggested and were already beginning reconnaissance of the galactic rim. Commander Daesung ordered the Thunder Echo to engage the enemy scouts along with a squadron of upgraded coalition ships. The battle would serve as both a test of their combined capabilities and a demonstration of human military doctrine for coalition forces who had never faced such a massive threat. The enemy scouts were enormous vessels that dwarfed even the Thunder Echo. Each one was over 5 kilometers long with organic hull surfaces that seemed to pulse with malevolent life. They moved through space with an unnatural grace that suggested they were alive rather than merely machines controlled by living beings. The battle began at extreme range, with the Thunder Echo firing its main cannon at targets over a light hour away. The massive weapon sent projectiles accelerated to significant fractions of light speed across interstellar distances. Each shot released energy equivalent to exploding stars and could destroy entire fleets with direct hits. Coalition ships provided support with coordinated missile barrages and energy weapon strikes. The human upgrades to their systems allowed them to engage targets at ranges they had never before attempted. The combined firepower of human and coalition forces was impressive, but the enemy scouts absorbed enormous amounts of damage while continuing to advance. The enemy vessels returned fire with weapons that seemed to bend space and time around their targets. Coalition ships equipped with human defensive upgrades survived hits that would have destroyed them instantly with their original systems. The improvements were the difference between complete annihilation and merely severe damage. Engineer Hyo Jin coordinated damage control efforts across the entire fleet using communication systems that connected human and coalition vessels. Her expertise with advanced repair techniques kept damaged ships operational far longer than should have been possible. The human technology was making a crucial difference in the fleet's survival. The battle continued for hours with both sides, trading devastating attacks across vast distances. The enemy scouts proved to be incredibly resilient, but they were also alone and outnumbered. Gradually, the combined fleet began to gain the upper hand through superior coordination and the devastating firepower of human weapons. The final enemy scout was destroyed by a combined attack that involved every ship in the fleet. The Thunder Echo delivered the killing blow with its main cannon, while coalition vessels provided targeting data and suppression fire. The enemy ship exploded in a burst of dark energy that was visible across multiple star systems. Commander Day soon broadcast a message to the entire coalition fleet after the battle ended. The engagement had been a success, but it was only the beginning of a much larger conflict. The enemy scouts had been gathering intelligence about current galactic defenses and would relay that information to the main invasion force. The real war would begin when the full enemy fleet arrived at the galactic rim. That force would be thousands of times larger than the scout group they had just defeated. The coalition and humanity would need to work together perfectly if they hoped to survive the coming storm. The battle had proven that cooperation between human and coalition forces was possible and effective. The younger species had shown courage and skill that impressed even veteran human commanders. Together they might have a chance against the approaching darkness, but only if they could unite completely before the enemy arrived in overwhelming numbers.